been, I guess, four primary ages in the land of the Warforged. The fourth primary age has ended, and the world finds itself in the genesis of a new age that is yet to be defined. But going back to the beginning, the very first age was known as the Age of Rage. In the Age of Rage, the Earth and plane it wasn't the earthen plane that it is now. It was a plane of one of the highest gods. This god's name was Rovan Rage, and he's pretty much like if there was a devil in the deity, this would be him. He's like the darkest and most vile of all of the deities, and the earthen plane was his plane. It was his domain. Um, in this age, though, all of the other gods united against Rovan Rage, and a war took place. In this war, it saw the dominion of the earth and plane be stripped away from Rovan Rage, and Rovan Rage was defeated, and his essence was ripped in three and scattered apart. Um, and as the land was taken away from Rovan Rage, the gods they reforged the plane, and as they reforged the plane, it became the earthen plane that it is now. And with the reforging of the plane, um, came the beginning of the Age of the Elves. In the Age of the Elves, we saw one of the highest deities, a deity whose name has been lost in time, abandon the sky and come down and have relations with a woman. And this relation brought about the first elf. And from this elf had three sons, and the elven dynasties were birthed. The bloodlines of the elves they remain pure throughout the Age of the Elves. The Age of the Elves is a time period that really can't even be measured. The length of it is unimaginable. The end of the Age of the Elves came, though, as the bloodline of the elves was polluted. One of the sons of the first elf, he took a human to wife, and as they bore a child, this brought about pollution to the elven bloodline, and it brought up a bunch of bad feelings within the elven nations, and it eventually led to a civil war amongst the elven people. This civil war saw the elven lines pretty much slaughter one another, and in the end of this elven civil war, the elven nations pretty much defeated themselves, and this gave way to the rise of man. It gave way to the age of man. Mankind rose and took dominion over the plane. Many kingdoms, many kings rose. But this time period, it was far from a time of peace. It was a time of war, and the gods sought endlessly to bring peace, to end all the wars. But no matter how much the gods tried, man ignored. Um, in the process of all these wars of man, the God sent a great sign to warn man of what was coming if they would not stop. And this great sign was a mighty earthquake that shattered the earthen plane. Before this earthquake, all the land was one giant landmass. With this earthquake, it shattered the land, and the land became many continents. Still, man ignored. And finally, there was a great war. And in this great war, the strongest of all of the empires of man was warring against an upstart dynasty. And one of the gods came down. And as this god came down, he took the bones of dragons, and from the bones of dragons, he forged the race of the Dragonborn. And the race of the Dragonborn became a weapon of the gods, and the gods used the Dragonborn race to defeat both of the armies. And shortly after this, the gods sent their final sign. The gods brought about the conclusion of the Age of Man. The gods calls a great black mist to cover all of the land, and with this great black mist, it was the end of the Age of Man. This great black mist, it brought plagues, it brought death, and this black mist actually gave life to the dead. Undead rose everywhere, and pretty much everything that there was slaughtered. This was the beginning of the Age of the End. within the age of the end, the gods pretty much turned their back on mankind. There was one god, though, who refused to turn his back on mankind. This god's name was All Light. All Light was once a mortal who ascended into godhood. And as the gods brought about the age of the end, All Light refused to give into this, and he turned his back on all the other gods. He was backed by one other god, the god of war. So the god of war and All Light, they sought to protect mankind, and they raised up an empress. Her name was Hail Athena. They gave her immortality, and through her, they led a mass of all the races high up into a mountain where they found safety. And they forged a kingdom, and this kingdom is the kingdom of Athena. It is the primary kingdom in the setting. And here in this mountain, they found peace. They found escape from the age of the end. Many thousands of years later, many thousands of years later, a moon fell from the sky. And when the moon fell from the sky, it shattered into thousands of shards. And when these shards fell to the earth, these shards absorbed all of the black mist. And with this moon falling from the sky, it was the end of the age of the end. And this happened probably about 50-ish years ago. And the world is in a place where a new age is beginning to unfold. So that is the basic outline of the ages of the Warforge. The city of Ovenfoliox, touch on that real quickly. It is a city that dates back to the age of rage, It is one of the oldest cities. It is throughout history been very secluded from the rest of the world, and it is a city that has found pride in just the protection of knowledge. So there is a lot of old knowledge and old tales there. Was there any questions you might have? I know that was a lot of information.
Is that exclusively a gnome city?
Yes, it is a deep gnome city. There is a few surface gnomes that reside there. Maybe every once in a while, someone of a different race would come through, but very rare. And at this moment, there's probably about like maybe 5 surface gnomes that dwell there. But other than that, is all deep gnome.
How public and kind of open with this ancient knowledge that they have held on to are they with outsiders and deep gnomes of the city?
There is sacred knowledge that is only passed down to the first son of every line. So, like there in the hang on, let me pull up the map of Ovenfoliox real quick. I have it in my archive stuff. Let me restore it. Okay, here we are. And this map's not to scale. It's just kind of for the sake of knowledge or an outline of things. So if you look, let me point it out.
Hey, Teshik's still there.
This section right in here, there are 5 like stalactites sticking up from the ground, and there's like a statue of that has had its head like knocked off. But the 5 pillars there in like the entrance of, or the 5 stalactites sticking up from the ground, it said that they are the embodiments of ancient deities. And it said that these ancient deities, they pretty much founded this city for the sake of protecting knowledge that was crucial for the ages. And it said that these 5 deities were the original five in the sky. And that's understood as there was once in ancient times 3 suns in the sky and 2 moons in the sky. When you travel to the surface now, though, there is 2 suns and 1 moon. Pretty much the ideal is that those ancient deities founded the city and for the sake of protecting knowledge, and the names of these 5 deities, it is very sacred to the deep gnomes, to the point where they only speak the names of these 5 deities once in their lifetime, and the one time they speak these names of these 5 deities is when they tell their oldest son the names. And after a father reveals these 5 names to his oldest son, the oldest son will go and seclude himself just in a time of prayer and a time of consecration. So over time, the amount of, I guess, gnomes that would know this knowledge would probably descend, and less would know it as the population grows, because only the eldest son would know. So at this point in time, the sacred knowledge is pretty much only guarded by like the higher ups in the community.
What happens if a family doesn't have a son or children at all?
That is a good question. If they are true to the tradition, then the knowledge is pretty much lost with them. But I think in every like line of tradition, there's always some that don't honor tradition.
Right.
So maybe there are some somewheres that speak the name 1,000 times in secret.
Okay. Cool.
Also,
That's
imagine
awesome.
that gnomes breed like rabbits.
But do they, Brad?
That is a good question. I've never really given much thought to how many offsprings a gnome has in his lifetime.
Because they're like really crazy and excited all the time.
I think some questions are better left unanswered, Michael.
Well, I think Ryden would know because he would totally be interested in that.
Okay. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Well, that's what
they
Ryden will
have
say
many
if
children.
anyone asks.
They have many children, but the dark elves kill them in the nooks and the crannies of the Underdark.
Oh yeah, but they do that with everything.
Yes.
Damn draw.
Okay, so let's just pick up where we left off last session.